Hello, welcome back to Kintsugi Talks Pod. I know it's been a while since I've done an interview, but we have an interview today, and I'm excited for this guest today for our conversation that we had before. It's been a while since we've had our conversation because we both just had busy lives, but her story is very inspiring to me, and I know it'll be very inspiring to all of you guys as well. Actually, before I get into it, am I using the right pronouns for you?
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to show respect in that way. I just wanted to make sure that I was using the right pronouns. And we have another cute little guest too. Hello.
This is my grandson, Adrian.
Hi, Adrian. You little cutie. Well, let me go and introduce my guest, Randi Lee Bowslaugh. She is an author, she is a mental health advocate, and she is also a cancer survivor. So Randi, thank you for coming on to my podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, of course, of course. I love that we had a little extra special guest. I love that. He's very adorable.
Grandma's his favorite, so.
Now, like how I said, part of your introduction that I said is that you are a cancer survivor. And I remember having a conversation before of just the journey that you went through with that. If you could share with the viewers and the listeners the type of cancer that you had and just the journey of how it was from getting diagnosed with it to your healing of it.
Sure. So I won't give away the diagnosis yet. First I'll tell you how I got there.
Okay.
So I went for and you'll probably figure it out within the first couple seconds, but I went for my routine checkup as a female with female body parts. And about a month after I had went for that, the doctor calls me up and I go in for my appointment. He says, there's abnormal cells. I was like, okay, what's that mean? So then he sent me to a gynecologist because here our family doctors can do those tests. And so then I went to a gynecologist after, and the gynecologist did a biopsy. And then I went back to his office again, and he said, okay, it's precancerous cells. And I said, okay. So we're just going to take out a little bit of the area, and then it'll be fine. Okay, cool. So I had what I call first surgery. And so I go in, they take that little bit out. He says, okay, I'll see you in 8 weeks. Okay, cool. 1 week later, he calls me into his office and I was like, oh, that can't be good. Like, you said I'm not supposed to see you for almost 2 months and a week. I knew something was bad. So I go and I'm waiting because they just were trying to like squish me into their day. So I had to kind of wait for a time. And I go in and I'm sitting there and I'm like freaking out because I already know it's something bad. The doctor comes in, and the first thing he says, he goes, you already have kids, right? I was like, yes. And like, me and my husband had already decided not to have any more. He had already went for a vasectomy. So we weren't having any more. And he said, okay, well, it's cervical cancer. I was like, okay, well, I don't need these parts anymore. You could just take it. I don't need it. You could take it. And I just kept saying that over and over because I couldn't really process it. And the doctor said, well, you have to finish healing from this first surgery before we can do anything else. And I said, okay, because you can take it. I don't need it. You can take it. And then I went and I sat in my car and I called my husband because I went to the appointment by myself, and I called my husband. I told him, they said it was cancer. And that was so much fun. And then so after this is almost 4 years ago now. It'll be 4 years in the end of July. And so I go in at the end of July for my hysterectomy, or rather, sorry, the beginning of July, going for my hysterectomy. And they took everything but the ovaries. They wanted to leave those in for the hormones. They didn't want me to go into early menopause, but everything else, they took everything else. And so all during that time, though, I didn't have a chance to process actually what that meant. Like, hey, you have cancer. I didn't have time to process it because during that time, my youngest, who's been diagnosed with autism, anxiety, depression, you name it, they diagnosed him with it. He was going through a lot of meltdowns. They were very violent meltdowns. We were having to call 911 services a lot, having to take him to the hospital a lot. He was in and out for attempting suicide. And it was a lot all at once. And I just had to sort of focus on making sure he stayed alive and kind of not processing anything else.
Yeah, that is definitely a lot for someone to have on their plate. Now, from the conversation that we had before about your son, well, correct me if I'm wrong, your child is trans, is that correct? Yep. Yeah, so son is like the correct pronoun I should be using, right? Okay. So your son well, first of all, I want to get into the conversation about kids and adults with autism, because I know we talked about it before, of just how people in general with autism are some of the most creative people that I've ever met. They're geniuses in my eyes. I've worked with kids with autism before in a whole bunch of different programs that I worked with in the past, and they are nothing short of geniuses. And yes, there's challenges here and there, but it's like they just glow and they just grow with anything to do with creativity. And you told me that your son had came up with this amazing idea, this like invention, business, if you will. If you could share it with the people, because I think it's iconic to me, because I still think about it to this day.
I love that. Okay, so and people can already follow it on social media. We've already got the Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok up and running. The business isn't going to be launched until mid-June to coincide with Pride Month. Yes, baby, a book. Cool, sweetheart. And so it was a math project, actually, and they had to come up with a business idea to present as like a dragon's den. And so he came up with gender reveal boxes for transgender people. And part of that, as he's explaining to me what this is, because it started as glitter bombs, and I was like, because he was supposed to like make the thing as well. I'm like, I don't think we can make a glitter bomb, and I don't want that to explode in my house. So I was like, why do you want it to be a glitter bomb? And he was saying, so it would be like a transgender reveal. And I said, oh, that's so cool. And then he said, and in each box, there is a resource sheet to help people understand how to best support their friend or family member. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is inspiring. This is amazing. I was like, I think we could really do this as a real business. And he goes, really? I go, yeah. So we've been working over the last couple months to get this launched. And so the graphic designer that we're working with through VisuWorks, he finally got us the logo, and now he's working on some of the other graphics that we're going to be using. So it's called Accepting You. And again, my kid is the creative genius behind all of this. All I am doing is connecting him with the right people to get him doing it. Because I have the connections, but it's all his business, all his idea. He's 15. And so yeah, we're hoping to launch it in June, like I said, for Pride Month. And so the Facebook page is up and the TikTok, and he's kind of sharing a little bit about what transgender means to him and trying to just make everybody understand that just because you might be transgender, and that might come out as sounding wrong, but it's like, because you're transgender doesn't make you any less of the person that you are. And just trying to help others understand how to support that person, because like you said, and you've been doing great. Oh, is that the correct pronoun? Is that the correct way to say your name? Whatever, like those are good questions. And that's part of the info sheet. There's like, what questions can you ask? And it's like, what pronouns should I use? What name do you want to go by? Another really good one was, who have you told? Because it's their story to tell, right? Like it's nobody else's. So you want to make sure that you're not kind of outing them when they haven't told certain people, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And after this like interview ends, like I want you to send me the link for everything so I can make sure I put it in like the description and like the bio for this episode, because I think it's iconic. I think that's like it's like 15 and coming up with an idea like that, it's amazing. That's a Shark Tank like worthy like idea in my head.
Yeah, and actually we were just talking to, piece of cat fur in my mouth. We were just talking to an app developer who I know, and we're hoping to make an app to go along with this. And I don't want to spill all the surprises, as we want to announce them on the social media, but we're hoping to launch a type of app with this to hopefully help the community be more understood. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of really cool creative aspects of this business that are coming along, because it's really all about helping. And for me as a parent, I'm going, okay, good. Because I was so worried. I was like, I don't think my kid could work for somebody for 40 hours a week, but I want you to be a contributing member of society. Yeah. And so coming up with this idea, and like I said, I think it's so good and so creative that I'm like, okay, you'll be okay. You'll be okay.
Yes. Yes. I think it's just beautiful what your son has done and is doing, and you as the supportive mother that you are, just doing all these things together with him. I think it's beautiful. Awesome. Something that I do want to add on that is like, it's probably evident to you, but then also to my listeners and stuff, that I am Christian. And I may not understand everything about anything that has to do with the LGBTQIA, I believe that's what it is, plus community. But at the end of the day, I'm going to show love and respect to them, because at the end of the day, they are human and everyone deserves respect. So I already know that there may be some people, like probably 1% of people, that'll have a problem with this episode, the fact that we are talking about your transgender child. And it's like, well, if you don't like it, you don't have to listen to the episode. It's fine. Exactly. But at the end of the day, I wanted you on because I think your story is very inspiring. At the end of the day, I think every story deserves to be heard. Every story deserves to be respected. So I just wanted to put that out there before we continue with the rest of our conversation.
Yep, I love it.
Now, one other thing that I did find so interesting about you is that you are trained in kickboxing.
Yes.
Now, that is something that I used to always want to do as a child. The only reason I didn't do it as a child because my mother couldn't afford it. But now as an adult, that's like, I have the money, I could do it now. And also it's a good form of protection. Now, Tell me, how did you get into kickboxing?
Okay, so we put our son into jiu-jitsu when he was 5. And so during his the kids class, there was a fitness class going on, a cardio kickboxing class off to the side. And I was looking and I said to my husband, I go, those ladies have really nice butts. I want a really nice butt. Turns out they were also runners, and that's where it came from, not the kickboxing, but that's okay. So I joined the cardio kickboxing class, loved it. It was so much fun. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try the regular kickboxing class. So then I went into the Muay Thai class and loved it. And then eventually I competed and I've coached and I've been to the worlds, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Now, I can only imagine that an outlet like kickboxing, because I know also that you are a mental health advocate and you've had your own mental health struggles. Would you say that that was a good outlet to help with whatever stressors you were dealing with that relate to your mental health problems?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I mean, any form of exercise really is, because it releases our happy hormones and our endorphins, all that fun stuff. And so if it is any kind of exercise that you really enjoy, and for me, I was really enjoying kickboxing, it will be a mental health coping strategy for you. With the kickboxing, it's nice because sometimes you just feel like hitting someone, and it's hitting people is not condoned. So unless everyone is agreeing upon it and you're sparring together. So,
unless it's consensual, then you can hit somebody in the face.
Yes, and you're wearing the right equipment.
Yes. Yes. Now, for when it comes to your mental health journey, would you mind going into what your diagnosis is, if you have one? And talking about what it was like when you first got that diagnosis and how it's affected your life up until now.
So I have depression, and I was in my mid to late 20s by the time I actually went and talked to the doctor about it. but I had been dealing with it since I was about like 14. Now, what I've been trying to say more recently in interviews is that when you are younger, when you're a kid or a teenager, you might think, just like I did, that it's sort of more normal because it's just the way that you are, right? You don't realize that there is a difference between your depressive mind and somebody else who isn't, because it's just the way that you have been. So it wasn't until I really became an adult that I was more putting together the pieces of what it all was. And then it wasn't until I was planning, like really truly planning on hurting myself, that I went to the doctor, and I was like, and I was just done. I was exhausted in every sense of that word by the time I went to the doctor. And he actually so he put me on antidepressants, and he gave me a note so that I could take some time off work because I was done.
Yeah. How did that shape the way that you had, like, your outlook on the world? Because I myself have been there, where I wanted to take my own life. And there's a lot of people that don't understand that it's like, it really affects you to the point where it's like you have a totally different outlook on everything that is around you, to the point where it's like you want to give up. And then there's some people that just genuinely don't understand. Why would you want to give up? Like, why do you, like, why, like,
Yeah.
like, why,
Yeah.
like, just why? Like, the big question of everyone is just like, why?
Yeah. Yeah. For outsiders looking in, it's like, oh, you have such a good life. You have a good job. You're married. You've got a house, right? And they don't realize that there's so much turmoil inside. They also don't know what's actually happening inside the house, right? Like we talked about how there was cancer, how there was violent meltdowns, things like that. So they don't know that part either from an outsider looking in. But really, it comes from your own brain telling you you're awful, your own brain telling you, you know, nothing's ever going to get better. And that is why we give up, is that we think it will never get better. It's not so much a sadness. It's not, you know, a lot of people who don't understand depression, they think, well, you're either happy or you're sad. That's not what it is. I've been happy, I've been sad, I've been angry, I've been content, whatever. But depression is a void, a nothingness, where you feel like nothing is going to get better, nothing is going to change. There's nothing you can do to fix the feeling of nothingness. I write in one of my books, actually, feeling sad is better than feeling depressed, because it's feeling something.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, the way that I describe my depression to people is that it's a numbness, really. It's like you're numb to a lot of things. You don't feel anything. And that what you just said or what you wrote is a very like powerful quote that's like, it's like I'd rather feel any other emotion in the world than to feel depressed.
Exactly.
May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I do love and appreciate the fact that there are so many people out here who make it their job, like, to be advocates, to spread awareness about whatever diagnosis, whatever mental health issue there is. But there still is a bit of stigma out there. I find that, especially for me being Christian, I find that there still is a lot of stigma associated with the church about it. There's times where the church can still be, and when I say church, like, I don't mean like the institutional building, like the church, like biblically defined as the people. So the people still have a very like super spiritual view on like the fact that some people have to take medication, the fact that some people need therapy and things like that. What do you think would or should be the solution to people who still have that way of thinking, whether they're part of the church or not?
Yeah, that is a giant question with no one easy solution, unfortunately. But I think it all comes down to education to start with, not just awareness, because I think people are aware in the sense that mental health is around. Now, they're not educated on what that means. And I think that's a big difference between awareness and actual education, right? You can be aware something exists, but not understand it at all. So I think first and foremost, educate yourself and start educating other people. And then for those of us that deal with our mental health on a regular basis and are at a point in their struggle that they're able to talk about it, because I mean, I'm not going to tell somebody who hasn't went to therapy or hasn't dealt with, what their diagnosis means. You got to work through your own stuff first. But for those of us who are willing to share, to be more open and to be more honest about what it looks like, what it feels like. And that doesn't mean that you have to go on podcasts. It doesn't mean that I have to write books about it. But if you hear somebody saying, oh, yeah, you're just faking it, maybe educate them a little bit on what it actually means. What, a lot of these are chemical brain imbalances, and that's why medication is so important for them. Right? Like schizophrenia and bipolar and stuff, that's not something that you can just wishful think away. I mean, neither is depression, but those are, your brain is not giving the right amount of chemicals or firing the way that other brains do. So I think it's important for people to understand that it's not that we want to be this way. It's that we are, and we're doing the best that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I myself, I have a borderline personality disorder along with depression and anxiety. And what's difficult for me is that there's a lot of stuff that I'm still figuring out while still having to educate like the people that are in my close circle that I want to be a part of that like support system for me. And I know there's people that can struggle with always kind of having to explain themselves to people, which can be very just draining of your energy. It could be very annoying. Was there ever a time where you had to deal with that, like probably maybe with your own husband or like with your people in your like personal group?
I'm gonna say actually the hardest one it's been with is my mom. Because she said this my whole life, just fake it till you make it. And it's like, okay, I can't just fake happy and then all of a sudden I'm just gonna be happy. Like that's not the way it works. I have to actually deal with my issues and what's happening. So she's been the hardest one to kind of make understand what it is. Most of the other people that I keep in my life and have as friends understand it. If they don't, then I've kind of been like, I don't have time for you. So yeah. But for the most part, I keep around me the people that are understanding about it.
Now, for people out there who probably don't have a community of people around them, what are some tips that you could probably give for people who want to have people around them, who want to like let people in to like help them? Like, what are some tips you can give for people out there who are like that?
Start with a cat. I have two of my cats are down here.
Animals really are great. Animals.
I was about to say animals really are great. They are an awesome starting point for real. But maybe a dog if you want something a little more friendly than a cat. They can be kind of jerks when they want to be. But don't put up with the people in your life that aren't being there for you. Like if somebody is belittling you or they are telling you, like my mom did, just fake it till you make it and stuff like that. If they are saying stuff like that and you've tried, I mean, don't just cut them out without trying first, but you've tried to explain to them what it is and they're still just making you feel awful. I would start by removing the toxic people from your life. Once you remove those people, then you'll be able to start seeing and meeting the people that are going to support you. So, I mean, social media has been great for that kind of thing too. There's different groups for it. TikTok has, like, you know, what side of TikTok are you on? There's a whole great mental health side of TikTok. So, and you may not ever meet those people in person, but it's a great start to building your community and feeling like you're not by yourself. Understanding that other people are the same as you. And that's an amazing starting point to start accepting yourself. Because until you can accept and embrace yourself, you won't find your community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think your cat wants to be in the podcast too.
He's very friendly. Oh, there's another one. They're not normally allowed in the basement, but they snuck in last night and they haven't left because of the dogs upstairs. So yeah. But yeah, so animals, remove the toxic people, and then start understanding yourself, and then the rest will come.
Yeah, understanding yourself is like a big part of it, because once you understand yourself, you're able to know how to like better, function, how to better like interact with people and also interact with yourself. I know that for me, I'm in a process right now where it's like I'm dealing with like my inner child and also my inner teenager, and they are both very angry, as they should be. And I'm also learning to deal with the fact that a lot of the trauma that I did deal with, it wasn't my fault. And even though what did happen to me was bad, the people that caused the trauma to come upon me, they didn't know what they were doing either. I didn't know what I was doing. They didn't know what they were doing. So it's also connected to like forgiveness as well, forgiveness to them and also forgiveness to myself.
That is such a good point. So forgiveness is something that I talk a lot about as well, because people think forgiveness means you're saying, oh, it's okay what you did. That is not what it is at all. Forgiveness is saying, I'm not letting you take up any more space in my brain for what you did. I'm not letting you have control over my emotions and feelings anymore, because I can't change the past. So I'm going to forgive you. I'm not going to say that what you did was okay. Maybe I'll never talk to you again, but you're forgiven in the sense that I'm not letting it take up any more of me.
And that's a healthy boundary, a very healthy boundary, and a very strong boundary. I had talked about this recently in one of my other episodes, of just like, for me, what I said is like, how I look at forgiveness when it comes to like me being like Christian and everything. I don't want to go to heaven with a grudge in my heart because I didn't forgive you for whatever you did. I mean, and again, what you did was wrong, but I'm going to take the time, that process of healing that I need to take, and also set a boundary that is like, because what you did affected me in such a way that you no longer have access to my life in these different ways. And I think everyone needs to practice that. I think once a lot of people start practicing that, they're going to see that their mental health actually starts to get better. It may not go away completely, but it'll get better and it'll get easier to function with. That's how I've seen it for myself.
Yeah.
One question that I want to ask you, how you were as a child, because I know you had brought up earlier that you were going through a lot of things as a teenager when you were like 14. Like you knew there was something wrong with you or something different about you at 14, yet you didn't get diagnosed until way later on in your life.
Yeah.
If there is something that you can say to that 14-year-old self, like what is something that you would say to them?
It's actually that you say that. So in the book that I released last year, Embracing Me, the very first chapter is write a letter to your younger self. and so I did that. So to my 14-year-old self, I said, things will get better was the main point of it. But I would also say speak up, because as much as, you know, I say my mom is the hardest one to get through about what depression is, that kind of thing. My mom also didn't have a clue what I was going through because I didn't tell her. I hid it all. And she was so focused on my brother, who was 4 years older than me, because he was starting to get into drugs and into trouble with the law. So she just thought, oh, you're doing well at school. You have some friends, you're fine. And inside I was completely broken. So without saying anything, she didn't clue in. So I would say to my 14-year-old self, speak up. Demand some answers, demand people listen and speak up about it. And so for any person that is listening right now that's going, oh, people don't understand, or maybe they don't even realize that you need help. Maybe they don't realize that something is going on. So unless you say, I feel different, or I feel upset, or I feel depressed, sometimes they just don't even know.
Yeah. That's something I could take away from myself. I didn't speak up a lot when I was a child. I wasn't really allowed to, but that's a whole other thing. The whole other thing. Now, you just brought up the fact that you are an author. Was writing something that was always a part of your life before you decided to become an author?
Oh yeah. So right when I was little, I would write. I wrote this little newspaper for my household way back on like the very first Windows kind of computer before we had the internet. And I would write like little movie reviews on it and what's happening in the house. And I'm pretty sure nobody ever read it. I think I probably made my mom read it. But it wasn't anything. And I would write little skits and force my cousins to act them out and do like little puppet shows and stuff that I had written. And then as a teenager, one of my first coping strategies with depression was writing poetry. And so that's actually how I got into being an author. Is I found those poems when I was in my 20s and I went, I don't want to throw them out, but they're just sitting in my basement. What am I going to do with them? And I turned them into my first book, Thoughts of a Wanderer. And then I had so much fun publishing that book that I was like, I'm going to keep doing this. So 10 books later, and here I am.
Now, being an author, anyone who has gone to writing, I look up to them. Writing for me is definitely a huge outlet in my life. It has been for a very long time. The first thing that I started writing in was a pink binder. And it was this like large, insanely large pink binder that my mother let me purchase with the cheapest loose leaf that we could afford at the time. And I wrote a lot of songs. And I wrote a lot of poetry. I wrote a lot about love, which I don't know why I was writing about being in love with somebody at 8 years old. I think it's because of the music I was listening to at that time.
Yep. I would do it.
Yeah. But it definitely made an impact to where now it's like I've continued to do that and I write songs now. Working on possibly getting music released. I don't know when that'll happen. It'll happen when it happens at this point. But I know that there's a lot of people out there that they struggle with finding something that could be an outlet to them. Like for you, and this, I know this would be helpful for other people too. How did you know that this was something that was helping your mental health and then you continue to do it?
That is a great question. Nobody has ever asked me that before. And I don't think I've ever put much thought into that question before. So nice. I think it just was when I was a kid, like younger, when I was talking about like the skits and stuff I'd make my cousins do with me, it always made me really happy to do those. And so when I was a teenager and feeling depressed, and then I started writing the poetry, and those were not little happy skits. Those were literally about hurting myself. They're very dark, but it released it. So I had that connection from when I was younger of how it made me feel happy. And then as I was writing it as a teenager and releasing those thoughts and emotions onto paper, it was like when you really, really have to sneeze and you're like, just come on, sneeze. And then you finally do, and you're like, that's what it's like. It's like you get it out and you're like, it's not my brain anymore. I can function again. Okay. So you really have to pay attention to that feeling, and that like it's just like a release.
A release. That's good. That's really good. The comparison to when you finally let a sneeze out, that's really good. I would have never thought of that.
I don't know why that's what popped into my head, but it is. And I'm like, oh, that works.
Because that's genuinely one of the best feelings ever, is when you release a sneeze. That is
Yeah.
like, it could be like 2 or 3 times before where it's like, it was right there and it didn't come out. But then the 4th time it finally comes out, you're just like, God.
Exactly.
Oh God, that's amazing. Now I want to wrap up with this last question. You being an advocate for mental health, everything to do with mental health awareness, what is one of like the best lessons that you've learned with you being a mental health awareness advocate?
Some people are not going to agree with me, and that's okay. And that's probably the biggest lesson I think anyone can learn for anything in life. Not everybody is going to believe you or like what you say, but if you feel that it's the right thing for you, then there's nothing wrong. And maybe that's a toxic person and they don't need to be in your life. Especially like trolls on social media and stuff. Hit that block button. You don't need that drama. Just hit that block button. Be true to you.
I love it. Also, this is the last question, I promise. You being an author, your books, if you do have an audience for your books, like who would your books be good for? Like why? Well, who do you write those books for?
That's an awesome question. And it depends what I'm writing. So I like to say I follow my dopamine. I write whatever I'm inspired to write. So I started with specifically nonfiction, but I have written some kids books now. I've written a collection of short, scary stories. So depending on which book we're talking about, it can be either for like little kids with the kids books, or teenagers and older for the scary stories. And then I would say teenagers and older for my nonfiction stuff. And some of it's really dark, and some people might go, oh, teenagers shouldn't read that. You're talking about killing yourself. That's exactly why they should read it, is because that's when I started having those thoughts. Very young kids try to hurt themselves. My kid was, I want to say 9-10 when he started trying to kill himself. And so we shouldn't hide it from them. And I don't use vulgar language in it. I try to keep to the purpose of the book, which is bringing awareness to mental health and trying to share coping strategies and things like that. So teenagers and older for most of it.
Yes, very important that you do talk about stuff like that, because it affects them too. I think people forget that it's like, because they're young, that's like they think that they're not going through a lot. They go through a lot. Young people go through a lot.
Yeah. Well, and they're growing and changing and trying to go through this life that, come on, we don't have it figured out. Even in our 30s, we're still trying to figure it out. And we're expecting these kids to understand bullying, friendship, their hormone changes and puberty and dating and their identities. And that's a lot. And yeah, it's normal growing up stuff, but it's a lot.
Yeah, and they could put a lot of pressure on somebody to the point where they get overwhelmed. And that's how people become anxious. That's how people become depressed. Is everything you said and more.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, we can end it here. Thank you, Randi, so much for being a guest on my show for today. Where can people find you? Where can people connect with you? Yeah.
So I am all over social media. You can find me at RB Writing on Facebook, and rbwriting.ca is my website. I am on YouTube for my YouTube channel, which is called the Write or Die Show, which is like writing. And I am on Instagram at Randi B Writing and on TikTok at Write or Die Show. And of course, I will send you the links as well for the Accepting You stuff and all my stuff too.
Yes, please do. I don't have anyone that is trans in my life, but if I do ever have someone that is trans in my life or they come out as trans, I will buy them one of those boxes.
So that's what I want to hear. Oh, and you can find all of my books on Amazon.
Yes, awesome. All right, to everyone who took the time to watch this interview and listen, or if you did both, thank you very much for doing so. You can continue to listen to Kintsugi Talks podcast on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and I am now on Reason, which is another podcast platform. You can follow me there as well. Of course, all the links will be below. All of Randi's links will be below, and the link for her son's incredible invention will be below as well. I got you. Everything will be below in the description, so you won't miss out on anything. And until then, God bless.